Welcome back to A Plus Parents, everyone. And I can say expert. And, when you talk about experts, right? What makes somebody an expert? So one of the things that make people an expert is that they've done some kind of formal training, right? But I think what really makes somebody an expert is that they've lived the life. And with us today is Lynna Sutherland. And Lynna, she's an expert and she's done both. So she's gotten the professional training, but really she's lived the life. Lived a life as what? As a parenting coach. And so you're going to get to know all about her. She is a homeschool mom of 8 children, and she's homeschooled all of them, all the way from beginning to end. And she told me this is the kind of the first and last year that all 8 of them are K-12, because she's got one starting kindergarten and one getting ready to graduate. So she's got all 8 at home right now, being homeschooled, and then they'll start making that transition. So her tribe is going to start to get a little smaller when it comes to as a homeschool mom. But in the meantime, the things that she's doing is she has a parenting program that she does, working with not only with this homeschool moms, but families in general who are looking for support in parenting. And it doesn't matter if you're a large family, small family, but she specializes in that large family. So I'm going to let her share a little bit more about that with you. And really, I think the thing that you'll find from Lynna, and by the way, the first place to find her is lynnasutherland.com. You'll see that in the show notes. We'll have all of her sites linked up. We'll talk about a little bit about each one. But what you'll find for Lynna is that she's lived it. She's done it. She's, breathe it, eat it, sleep it. And now what she gets to do is she gets to go back and share and really work with families on the things that didn't work for her, the things that did work for her, and really coach people through what works in what they're dealing with every day. So first of all, Lynna, welcome to A Plus Parents. I'm so excited that you're here because we've known each other for so long, and just, hey, and welcome.
But yes, I'm very glad to be here, Dennis. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So, you got right into it. We'll come back and we're going to talk about all the different websites you have. But I think knowing that you've 8 kids, right? And they've all homeschooled. So, why did you, what made you, why did you choose homeschooling as the way to go? When did you know you were going to do it? And, most people are going are you crazy? Right. But yeah. No, not at all. Right. And
I wasn't when I started, but I might be now. I'm not sure.
Well, what really got you going on that? Why choose homeschooling?
Yeah. So, I actually was homeschooled myself partly. I always hesitate. Like people say, I'm a homeschool graduate. I guess I'm a homeschool graduate because I did graduate as a homeschooler, but I was only homeschooled for kindergarten and for 11th and 12th grade. And I was in public school in between. And after college, I was a public school teacher. And so homeschooling, I think one of the benefits of being homeschooled, even though I wasn't homeschooled for, my whole educational career, one of the benefits of having been homeschooled was it kind of demystified it. It didn't feel like this weird, bizarre thing. I kind of had a feel for, how one does homeschooling and that's a viable option. And, being a school teacher, it's another thing where I feel like, I will be out. I'm happy to mention that I was a public school teacher, that I, was licensed as a teacher. I hate it when people use that as oh, well, then it's okay for you to homeschool because you were a licensed teacher. Yeah, I feel like there was a lot of unlearning that had to be done in order to shift into a homeschool environment. It's not good, bad, better, worse. It's just different. Homeschooling is a different animal than, teaching in any kind of a traditional classroom, whether it be public or private. But I kind of always had in the back of my mind that this is what I wanted to do. And so when we started homeschooling, I think people say, how long have you been homeschooling? And I say, well, I can calculate from when my oldest was 5, or I can calculate from my firstborn overachiever days of trying to teach my 3-year-old how to read, which one it qualifies when you started homeschooling. So I think at the beginning we started homeschooling and I had this very academically focused mindset of oh, my children are going to receive this stellar, amazing, rigorous education. And they're going to all be amazing, brilliant geniuses from homeschooling. So that's definitely the mindset I had when I started.
That's awesome. I always tell people, because I was a public school teacher. I just tell people I'm a recovering teacher. That's the best way for me to say that, right?
Yeah.
Because you really hit it. It's like there's a lot of unlearning that you have to take away from the classroom, because when you're doing it at home, it's a whole different thing. And
Yeah.
yeah, there's some things that you can bring with you, but if you think about all the things that you actually discovered that were not from being a public school teacher, which is really, really cool. So, okay, so you kind of said, well, you maybe didn't start out crazy, but maybe ended up there, right? So, you probably have, when you got started, like you had this perspective on what it was like to have a healthy, successful homeschool, environment at home for your kids. How has that changed over time? Because, you're starting when they were 3, now you got them graduating, right? So what does it look differently now to you?
Yeah. Well, I think, and I've seen this with so many young moms who are starting homeschooling. Homeschooling is still in our culture, by and large, it's weird, right? It's an oddball thing to do. And so when you homeschool, you already sort of have this sense of like, people are going to think I'm crazy. People are going to question my judgment. People are going to want me to defend myself and prove that what I'm doing is a good thing. And especially when they're little, there's really this feeling of like, well, gosh, if you could get your 3-year-old reading, or if your 4-year-old could recite all of the presidents of the United States, or if your 5-year-old is like doing pre-calculus, then you've really validated yourself. You've proven that what you're doing is just amazing and it's the best thing ever for your kid. And so I think, kind of as a self-defense mechanism, there's that temptation to want to focus on the things that everybody generally thinks are the measures of success, because then you feel like you can, validate yourself in front of the skeptics and the critics out there. And thankfully for us, none of those skeptics and critics were in our family, but I've talked to lots and lots of moms who, maybe it's dad, maybe it's the in-laws, maybe it's whomever, is super nervous about this idea of homeschooling and are you going to ruin your children? And so it's normal that we feel like super eager to have all these results and these measurable outcomes so that we can say, oh no, look, they're brilliant little geniuses and I'm giving them a leg up on life by doing this. And there's certainly, there's nothing wrong with wanting to provide your children with amazing educational opportunities. And I think it is our responsibility to make sure that we are connecting our children with whatever opportunities we can. But that's a really terrible way to measure your success overall in the homeschool, because it puts a lot of really unproductive and unhelpful stress on you, and then by consequence downstream on your children. And so it kind of removes the freedom and the flexibility that's exactly what makes homeschool beautiful. So instead of being able to say, my kid's not reading, he's 7, it's okay. I'm seeing him make progress. I'm confident that he's going in the direction he needs to go. It's okay that he's not reading at 7. If your view is what my children do and being outstanding is how I know I'm okay as a mom, that doesn't work when you have a 7-year-old who's not reading yet. And so it removes your ability to be like, it's fine. I'm not a bad mom. I'm not a bad homeschool teacher. I'm able to flex with his needs, and it removes your ability to be okay with him, and to tell him, it's fine. It's fine. You're making progress. You're doing great. I'm not worried. I'm not concerned. So yeah, that view of success can be really suffocating. And, one of the things that I hear a lot of moms say, but I think it takes some practice and some intention to incorporate this or to see what it looks like in real life. A lot of moms say, well, one of the reasons we homeschool is because we wanted to improve relationships, or like we wanted more time together. We wanted to, family time and that kind of thing. So, and that's great. And for us as well, that's a huge part of homeschooling, is being able to be together and do things together. But when your primary goal is like academic amazement and the relationship is down here, then the relationship will take a back seat to, needing to prove and validate yourself with the academic success. So really, if you're going to use homeschooling as an opportunity to strengthen relationship, then you've got to focus on that first. And, the academic success, in some ways, the academic success is almost a fruit of that healthy, safe, stable home relationship that you're working on, not It doesn't work the other way around. You can't, taskmaster your kids into academic success and expect relationship to come out of that.
Right. Oh, that's so great. And I think with anything, right? Any kind of coaching relationship, any kind of, parenting relationship, all of it, it's going to start with the relationship has to be there first. And
Yeah.
then like, I love that you said the way you said that, the fruit, right? It's like the fruit of what actually by building that relationship, and here's the fruit of your labors, right? So that's really cool. Now you have this saying that you talk about to be the student of your children as learners. So tell me a little more about that. What do you mean by that?
Okay, so this is the exact kind of thing that as a younger parent, I would have really scoffed at. I would have thought, like, that's ridiculous. Why is the grown-up the student of the child? That doesn't make any sense. Obviously, grown-ups know more than children. We are here to teach them because they don't know and we know, and we're supposed to teach them. And I think what I missed at the time is that, yes, of course, there are, it doesn't take too much thought to realize that in general, grown-ups have more life experience. Grown-ups know facts that kids don't know, where it's our job, to protect them, to provide for them, to educate them. But, knowing about something, like, for example, knowing about anxiety is not the same thing as knowing what your child's experience of anxiety is, or knowing how to read is not the same thing as understanding what the obstacles are that your child is facing in the process of learning how to read, right? So yes, you as an adult do have knowledge and skills and connections in the world and things that you can offer to your child as a child who doesn't have those things. But our real job in homeschooling is to seek to better understand kind of what it's like to be inside your child's head. And that applies to anything. It applies to academics, but it also applies to, behavioral struggles or, mental health, emotional challenges and things like that. My favorite phrase about this is, there's a book called The Whole Brain Child by Daniel Siegel and Tina Payne Bryson, and they use the phrase chasing the why, which I think is great. And the way I like to explain that is, in parenting and education, in all kinds of areas, we tend to start with the problem, and then we strategize forward like this, like, okay, my child is doing this unwanted behavior, or my child has this educational obstacle or whatever, and I want to get from B to C. So I need some strategies that will get me from B to C. So parenting the whole child looks like actually going from B back to A and chasing the why. So in other words, how did we get here? What is behind this? What's going on here? And so the part about being the student of your child is just not assuming that we know the answer. And I see parents do this, like, I've gone over the multiplication tables with him 100 times and he still doesn't do it fast. And I think he's being lazy. Okay, well, maybe let's not start there, because is that where you would want someone to start if you were struggling with someone, with something like, let's just assume that this is a character problem. No, that never helped anybody to feel supported educationally. So chasing the why looks like going backwards first to just kind of figure out, like, what's underneath this? What's behind this? Why does my child break down in tears every time we do this? Instead of saying, like, you're disobedient, I'm going to put these consequences in place to make you do it. Go back and be a student of your child. And the funny thing in English is that, even though I love the phrase chasing the why, and I think it's exactly the right thing to do. Weirdly, though, in English, if you ask questions that begin with a why, it almost always sounds critical and provokes that kind of defensive response, right? So like if you're getting ready to go somewhere with the family and you come downstairs dressed to go and they say, why are you wearing that?
Yeah.
It's not a neutral question, right? Like it's an automatic assumption. You shouldn't be wearing that and you better defend your reasoning. And there's a very slim chance that you could say anything that would be sufficient to convince me that you're wrong, that I'm wrong and you're right. So chasing the why has to be more of a creative process where we're going to ask questions. We don't say, why did you do that? We ask questions that are usually more circuitous and just help them to share with us more of what it's like to be inside their own head with, I think the essential ingredients are just an approach of curiosity and compassion. So we're not saying like, what is wrong with you? We're saying, okay, that's interesting. Let's talk more about that. I'm curious to know more about why this is difficult for you. Or, I noticed yesterday this, but today this. So that's interesting. Tell me more about that. So I think that's kind of essentially what it looks like to be a student of your child.
It's so great. Well, I think you're pointing to something huge too, because look back to then, you as homeschool mom, as a parent, as a spouse, as a partner, as a community, someone in your community, every time that you're learning from your young person, and they all have something different to teach us, right? What you get to take away with you now is you're not just having one way of doing things. Now you've got a whole toolbox, and that toolbox can be used in other relationships with other people, in conversations you have with other people, and also in your coaching. And when you're actually working with other parents, it's like you've seen so many different things. It's not like you're 8 kids, you have your learning style. I'm going to take a guess that it'd be kind of silly to say that they all 8 of them all learned the same way. It's kind of like, no, it wasn't going to happen like that. So I just think it's so great that you because you're strengthening for yourself, and at the same time you are chasing that why. And what a cool way to say that too. And especially to go back, because typically, and I see this as a math thing too. It's like when kids struggle with math, it's usually not it's not the topic that they're working on. It's something from before.
Yep.
That if you can get that uncovered and figure out what's going on there, then the new topic, the new concept makes total sense to them, so it's usually something else like that. So very similar, which is very cool. So yay, let's go. So, when you're looking at, for homeschoolers and for homeschool families, and for a lot of times for people just getting started, or sometimes people that have been doing it for a while, they get stuck, right? And it could just be something they're overlooking. So when you look at like what we would say, like the essential elements, right, for having that healthy homeschool, what does that look like? Or what could you see that could get overlooked, that people may either they had it and they forgot about it, or they just didn't think about it when they were getting going?
Right. Yes. So, and this is going to go back to something I discussed earlier, where, if we want, and I hope that we do want homeschooling to be partly about strengthening relationships and teaching healthy social emotional skills and relationship skills, then we really have to kind of set that as the foundation, the priority. And as I said before, allow good learning to come out of that. We know, again, going back to the public school setting, it's very difficult for children to learn when their basic needs are not met. And in the home, we hopefully are doing a good job of making sure they have breakfast and clothes and, the comfortable chair to sit in, all those things. But I think the piece that we often miss is the emotional relational safety. Again, we know about test anxiety, and we know how kids who are really bright can really bomb, time tests or standardized tests or whatever, because when the emotional centers of your brain take over, it overrides and disconnects from the logical and the rational centers of the brain, makes it difficult just to think, just to, recall what and connect information and that kind of thing. And so I think that's a piece that we often miss when we're homeschooling is, we're often, again, like I said, we're strategizing like, okay, they hate math. What do I do? Or they take forever to get this done, or they're distracted, and, give me a strategy, give me a sticker chart, give me a, something that's going to fix this problem, instead of going back and seeing if there's something just in the relationship or in the home environment. And oftentimes it can be something that even the parent didn't intentionally say, like, hopefully none of us are saying like, well, I'm not going to love you anymore if you don't do your math right. But to a kid, they interpret things through their own filters, their own level of understanding. So, if mom is dreading getting up and doing the homeschool day, and she's maybe a little irritable or short-tempered, children are very self-referential. We hear a lot about, unfortunately, kind of the negative aspect of this, of like, oh, children are so self-centered and they think they're the center of their own universes. And I mean, that's true in a way. I think we're born like with the skills needed to make sure that we get what we need to whatever capacity we can. But another part of being self-referential means that they blame themselves for everything that happens. And so you'll see this a lot of times when there's conflict, the children will internalize, like, I'm bad. This is my fault. I've done something to cause this. And so, a lot of times just the tension that mom is feeling about homeschooling or, whatever, maybe it's not even homeschooling. Maybe she's just stressed because there's bills that are due and, that's kind of coming out in her personality, but it's not uncommon for kids to internalize that, like, mom doesn't like me, or mom is mad at me that I didn't get this concept the first time, or whatever. And so a lot of times I think there are things like that that just kind of get woven into our family life, our family interactions. And we don't even recognize that they're having that impact on our kids and their feeling of just safety, their ability to feel comfortable saying, I know you've explained this 3 times. I don't get it. I still don't get it. I need you to help me again. Do they feel like they can say that without you basically judging their moral character for not getting it? Another aspect, I think, and this kind of seems like common sense, but I think I don't know, maybe as homeschool moms, we're just so used to the idea of like sacrifice for your children, put yourself, aside and just meet your children's needs. But, our children really need to know that when they're struggling, or even when they're excited about something, when they're experiencing big emotions, that we will engage with them on those big emotions. And, we as parents are finite. We have limitations. We're not unlimited resources of emotional, connection for everyone. And so I think a lot of times what happens is when moms don't have an opportunity to get away or to have a break, they just start saying no all the time, not intentionally, but the kid comes up and says, mommy, look what I did in Minecraft. Mommy, I had a dream last night. And the mom is like, I need another cup of coffee. Right. And so, there's that kind of disconnect that's happening, which is so ironic because we tend to think like the more you're with your kids, the more you'll be connected to them. But if mom doesn't have that ability to, to kind of recharge and pour in, it almost becomes like it would be better to be with your kids less hours of the day and be recharged and ready to fully engage with them than to be with them all day and never really able to engage with them. So
Wow.
I think those are some of the things that we kind of miss when we're troubleshooting, why can't my child do math or whatever it is that might be going on.
Oh, that's just so great. It is taking care of, it's got your own self to be able to take care of yourself. And again, what are you doing? You're demonstrating that to your young people, to your kids, to say that you have a say too. So it's like, as they grow up, that they don't turn into that person who now just does something for everybody else and doesn't take care of themselves. So that's just such a great, that's just so great. All right. So now, when you look, right, 8 kids, homeschooling all of them, right? It's different from homeschooling 8 to homeschooling 2. So what would you say, like for you as a, homeschooling a large family, and I have my 2 kids that we do homeschooling with, right? So it's a real different world for me and our family, but what does it look like for you? Like the most challenging aspect for you for homeschooling a large family, what would you say would be that thing?
100%, hands down, no questions asked. It's meeting the emotional needs of 8 children. I think there's tons of ways that I can outsource, learning, online curriculum, video. I mean, we live in kind of a golden age of homeschool curriculum options. So, there's just so many ways to alleviate the responsibilities of like the teaching or the grading or whatever there. But still, and one thing that's on my mind is that none of these children, although I will say they all love being part of a large family. There may come a time where somebody's struggling with that, feeling resentful, and, we will have that conversation. But at this point, they all love being part of a large family, but it's still true that none of them chose to have 7 siblings, right? That was a choice that we made. And, so I never want them to feel like, you have less of a right to your mother because you have 7 siblings, as if that's something they like bargained away in exchange for having all these siblings or something. And so I think that's the part that, I was not able to fully calculate before, when kindergarten to 12th grade, that means we had 8 children in 12 years. So my oldest was 12, not even a teenager, by the time the 8th had arrived. So, we hadn't gotten into any of that, growing up, moving towards independence, the increased needs of big questions about life and all of those things before we had our 8th. So, I feel like that was a decision that we made, and we need to make sure that their needs are met. It's not fair to say like, well, I only have the emotional resources to meet 3 of your needs. So the next, 5 of you are just going to have to fend for yourselves. But
Right.
yeah, 100%. It's not the academics, although, yeah, that's challenging. It's meeting the emotional needs of 8 children.
Right. Oh, that's so great. And it comes back to whether 2 kids, 8 kids, like coming back to that, right? Because when I think about that, I'm like, oh yeah, well, that would be right where I'd want to start with my own kids. And then I have to stop because it's like, but I don't have 8, right? So I can see why the challenge is there. It's like, I can handle the 2, but 8, oh my goodness, right? So that's amazing. So, okay. So parents that are, here they are, and they want to create that healthy homeschool environment. If you had the kind of like the magic, the most important thing for them, what would you say that is?
Okay, so this is not just my own opinion, although it definitely holds water when I think about my own experience personally, and then also, other moms that I've worked with and things. But parenting experts like Dan Siegel and Tina Payne Bryson would say that there is one predictor of success in parenting. And again, when I say success, I don't mean you're raising, rocket scientists and doctors. I mean like healthy relationships, healthy grown adults. And that one predictor is your ability to own your own stuff. It definitely, we hear about generational trauma, like, people who grew up in abusive homes, and then, to what extent does that carry over to the way they parent their children? But they actually found that childhood experience was not the indicator of parenting ability. What was the indicator of parenting ability was, the ability to take responsibility for and discover, and again, even with yourself, to approach with kindness and curiosity what it is that makes you tick, especially what it is that maybe triggers you or is a difficulty for you, and to work on that, to take responsibility for your own things. So I'll give you a classic example. We were talking in the month of August, we did Angry August. So we spent a month going through a book about triggers, different things that trigger you as parents. And one of the triggers, of course, was mess left around. And the book was a very light treatment of the topic. It wasn't super in depth or psychological or whatever, but a number of the moms talked about like, it's so frustrating when the kids come in and they just dump their coats and their shoes on the floor, right? So we're all going, oh yeah, that's so frustrating because I have all this work to do. And so, but when we started talking about it, I said, but why? Why does that bother you? Like, it seems obvious that it would bother you, but why? And the answers from the different moms were different. So like one mom is saying, I feel like I work so hard to do all this stuff for the kids that when they throw their clothes and shoes on the floor, it feels like a betrayal. Like they don't care about, all the work that I'm doing, and they don't see any big deal with like just dumping more work on me. It feels really hurtful, right? And another mom said, well, I feel like, I'm panicking because I think like, how can this child ever hold down a job and have a responsible adult life if I can't even train them to like put their shoes away? So I feel like, am I a failure as a mom? Am I ruining this child's future? Right. And they all realize that these are kind of, extrapolations of what they're struggling with. But it really was important to kind of go, same thing we do with our kids. Instead of like, okay, the shoes are on the floor, we got to get a new strategy to get those shoes in bins, to go back and be like, why does that bother me so much? Like, why is that so frustrating to me when the kids leave their shoes on the floor? And ultimately, your fears about failing as a parent, or your feelings of betrayal, or whatever it might be, that's yours. You've got to own that. And that doesn't mean criticizing yourself, but it means saying like, that's interesting. Okay. So I'm seeing this. I wonder, I wonder what I can do about it. Might be talking to somebody about it, might be, therapy or other kind of story work to understand your own, wounds or triggers. Could be all kinds of things, but really, scientifically speaking, the most important indicator of successful, healthy parenting is your willingness to just own and take seriously your own internal struggles, which I think, as you were saying a moment ago, it's not just about like, oh, I'm going to fix myself so I can be a good mom. It's about modeling, this is a way of life. This is a way of life. We're constantly, even as adults, saying, okay, that was weird. I wonder why I reacted that way. I wonder what's going on there. I'm not going to just start berating myself, although that's definitely a temptation that I have. I'm going to approach myself with kindness and curiosity. Wonder what's going on there. Let's think about that.
That's so great. Yeah, it's like, we can start out by thinking, okay, there's something clearly wrong here, or we could start out with, okay, why is that happening, right? To really start to look, and then if something is wrong, great, but it doesn't mean that if something's not working the way you want it to, that there's something innately wrong with me. It's just there's something that's not working the way that I want it to, as well as it could be, right? Which is like anything with a car or a bicycle, or it's like if it's not working as well as you want it to, you do what you need to do so that it's working the way you want it to work, right? So kind of similar to that. All right, so you have you've got, well, first of all, you have a coaching program that you do with parents, and I know in 2023 you have some courses coming out as well. So tell us a little bit about SiblingRelationshipLab.com, because that's the website where people can find out about your coaching programs you do, as well as the courses that you have coming out the first of the year.
Yeah, absolutely. So I really feel strongly that it's really important. I mean, just again, neurobiologically, we really need to be able to connect with another human, somebody who we know sees us, hears us, understands, even just, I can remember at times in my own journey, telling someone a story of something that was hard. And I like to say, when their jaws hit their chest at the appropriate moment in your story, and you just feel seen and understood. So I think that's a really crucial part of getting help with parenting, because, there are many good books out there. I could recommend books. I have a podcast, so again, I'm not against podcasts, but at a certain point, it can be really helpful just to have another real live human being who can listen to your story, listen to your concerns, and express empathy, validate the struggles that you're dealing with, and then offer, some solutions. I always say it's almost never the case that you're doing something wrong. It's usually just the case that you need some more ideas. And so somebody who's just another person who has, as you said, some experience with not just with answers, but with her own failures and her own, things that I wish I'd known earlier, that I'd love to share with somebody else so they can avoid some of the pitfalls I've made. So right now what I do is I offer one-on-one coaching, kind of like a, a la carte, sign up a session at a time. However, I know that for some folks that might be price limiting, or, you might want a little bit more direction, even if you're going to work in a group. So in 2023, we'll be reformatting some of the material that we already have and adding some new material. So we'll be offering 4 different courses, and I think there'll be probably about 8-week courses, and you'll have live Q&A times during the courses. So it'll be less expensive than paying individually for sessions, but of course it'll be more of a group rather than a one-on-one. But we'll talk about mom anger. We'll talk about parenting foundation. So a lot of the kinds of things that we've been talking about here, just like what is healthy parenting? What do our children need to feel safe? We'll talk about kids' emotions, because that's another really big one. And I think one that I get questions about all the time as a homeschool mom. And then we'll talk about sibling conflict, which I already have a course on sibling conflict, but I'm going to be reworking that and incorporating more of the things I've been learning recently about brain research. So.
Oh, wow. That is awesome. Oh my gosh, they're going to be so excited when this is out and going. So people that want to find you, they can go to LynnaSutherland.com, and then you have everything linked up there. Plus you've got Instagram, you've got your own podcast, you've got a huge Facebook network that people follow you around on. Is everything linked up on your main site on LynnaSutherland.com, or how do they best find you?
Yeah, now that you mention it, I don't know that I have social links there. I have links to my sites, but I ought to go in and add some social links. But I'm pretty much Lynna Sutherland everywhere you look. So if you just
they just have to Google you and they'll find you. Yeah. That's perfect. Oh my gosh. Well, if it's okay with you, Lynna, what we could, at the first of the year when the courses are up and they're running, let's get back together and do this again and let people know about how it's going and how to reach you. And we'll let people know about what you've got going in 2023.
I would love to do that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. All right. Well, perfect. Well, Lynn, thanks for taking time out of your day today, because I know you got, as many things going on as probably more than most people, right? So, so thanks for taking your time to do this today, making your schedule work to do this, and super excited to come back at the first of the year. We'll come back and look again and find out more about what you've got going on. And to everybody listening today, thanks for being here, and we'll see you next time on A+ Parents. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.